Ladies and gentlemen, the situation in Middle East doesn't look very good. There is a strong possibility of the war reigniting, and there are many evidence that are leading to that. So let's just watch on and see what do I mean by that. It's very clear right now that it isn't sunshine and rainbows, and all the hopes that we have on Friday just suddenly vaporize with the Iranians closing the Straits of Hormuz and actually shooting at tankers. Now, this is a very big letdown, and I think the market will have a reaction tomorrow. We don't know how bad the reaction is, but we know that the chances of a ceasefire is dying. And I think I've got some insider news that I'd like to give you that the situation on the ground tells us a very different story than what Donald Trump is saying. In short, war might be restarting. So the ceasefire window is now closing. We're only a few more days to the ceasefire closure, and the military buildup in that area tells a very different story from all the good news, peace is likely to happen, coming to a deal, and things like that. So while this is happening, I'll bring you very important news on a breaking level. So remember, hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of this. Let's just watch on. So the situation right now is this, that the ceasefire that has begun about a few days ago has now set to end in about 48 hours. So this is the current situation. The ceasefire is going to end in 48 hours. And this is a very tight deadline. Of course, they can extend it, but let's also be mindful that things are getting very fragile right now. Now, there's a major contradiction because it's not just the Americans through Donald Trump that are saying, oh, great, they have great progress and things like that. Even the Iranians are saying that. But they also said that, wow, the gap that between them is so wide. And both of them are loading weapons and repositioning their forces. So now, the biggest evidence of a progress in peace negotiation would be taking a look at not just the hotels in Pakistan which they are assembling, but taking a look at the military situation on the ground. US is doing something very different from what Donald Trump is saying. There is this insider news happening right now. Massive airlift of US military cargo is en route Middle East tonight. Okay, and it's been going on for a few days. A major reloading operation for the forces in the region. So my insider in the inner circle of this matter is telling me that the administration is really preparing for a war, and the deadline would be the arrival of the third aircraft carrier group the deadline will be the arrival of the carrier group USS George Bush. So that is set to come probably in a week or two. Now, let me just say this. All the things that are said by Donald Trump saying that, wow, they have got great progress, things are happening, great, 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 great. Then why is Donald Trump such a business-minded person wasting billions of dollars bringing a massive amount of military asset into a region right now? So one side, he says and tells the world, okay, things are good. The other side, he's preparing for a massive military build-up. Why? So if you were to take a look at some of the flight trackers, they are detecting massive wave of US military cargoes landing in Middle East, and there's a lot of resupply of combat troops right now. So there is a massive US airlift of military equipment, and you can detect that in the flight radar tracker, and all these are spelling a lot of military build-up in Middle East, not just in the Gulf countries, but also in Pakistan as well. So these are cargo planes. These are not nice, Boeing uh, Boeing planes. They are lifting passengers and things like that. So why are you doing that, right? The answer is very clear. So clearly, the military buildup is telling us a different story. And Pete Hegseth, which is the U.S. Secretary of Defense or War, He actually says that U.S. postured to restart combat, and they are actually quite gunpowder hungry, I would say. And right now, they have reinforced with 10 more thousands of U.S. troops, which I've announced previously. And outright, Lee said, if a deal isn't reached by Wednesday, we may not extend the ceasefire. That's actually said by Trump himself. But however, Trump is famous for hot air. By now, everybody knows that. But you know what? That's also a way of posturing to pressure Iranian side. Well, actually, the best group of people to take a look will be the Israelis. The Israelis are lining up big time for a restrike. And to be frank, the Israelis are probably the one that has the least incentive for a peace agreement because they haven't really wiped out the full military capability of the Iranians, which is their arch enemy. So right now, the Israeli Defense Force have approved fresh targets in Iran, and they are all lining up national infrastructure and energy facilities. This is all announced. And the air defense right now is in maximum readiness, and the interceptors build-up is massive as well. And they are right now still taking on action, not warfare, but demolishing buildings in Lebanon and inflicting a lot of pain on the Lebanese. So looks like they have no intention of withdrawing from Lebanon. And this, by the way, is also a flashpoint. So just to be very clear, Lebanon is a precondition for peace. And Netanyahu will outright say that, they're not done with Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon. So in short, we're going to see quite a lot of action possibly soon. Now, the Iranians are not collecting dust. They are getting their missiles ready and they dare to close their straits. And the supreme leader, which has never appeared for a long time, warned of a bitter defeat, new bitter defeat for the US and Israel. But of course, right, I'm sure they will say something like that. And the IRGC yesterday fired on 2 Indian vessels. Now, a lot of people just heard that they fired on 2 Indian vessels, but they didn't know of this particular news. They fired on 2 Indian vessels that were already approved to cross the straits. So these 2 Indian vessels did not chong, right? Did not make a daredevil cross of the Straits of Hormuz. They were pre-approved already by the Iranians. But as the ships go crossing it, they were being fired upon. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's clearly a case the left hand doesn't talk to the right hand. And I think the military is more gung-ho than the civilians in that sense on clearing the traffic. So we don't think that even within the Iranian administration, there is alignment as well. So right now, it's a bit complicated on all sides, not just the American side as well. So clearly, the Straits of Hormuz is still blocked by both parties. And as long as the US won't lift the blockade, the Iranians won't lift the blockade as well. Let's not forget, while all the things are saying there's going to be a second talk, there's going to be a second talk, there's going to be a second talk. Well, guys, the second talk is not happening. The first talk failed because the key issue, which is at the end of it, uranium, is not accepted by both sides. Trump wants the Iranians to surrender their uranium, and the Iranians say no, uranium is sacred. So again, right, this is where there is a clash of demands on both sides. Now, there are evidence showing that there could be possibility of a deal, and there's also evidence that possibly there is very against a deal. So let me just say this. Well, on the side of the optimistic view that there could be a deal coming is the Pakistanis are still preparing the logistic for a round 2 negotiation. They prepared 2 nice hotels. Security is all lined up right now, possibly for both parties to step in. And Trump kept telling the whole world that, oh, very good news is coming, very good news is coming. Even the Iranians, the Speaker of the Parliament, Ghalibaf, actually said that there are only 1 or 2 issues remaining. But however, I will just say this, that 1 or 2 issues are probably very insurmountable if you just take a look at the surface. So that's on the optimistic side. What about the negative side? Well, situation does look very good in terms of a peace talk. right now there are no dates set for round two. While Trump has said, in 2 days' time, most likely we have a talk. That 2 days keep happening, So the topic on the nuclear enrichment, surrendering of the nuclear resources remain unresolvable right now. The Straits of Hormuz was suddenly closed. The Iranians fire upon tankers and cargo ships, and Lebanon remain being inflicted with pain by the Israelis. And right now, there's a massive weapons and military assets airlift, plus a lot of troops coming in by the Americans, and Israel's getting ready, lock and loaded. So the BBC actually says very clear that there's little sign of a deal. So that's the situation on the ground right now. The oil market actually crashed quite a lot on Friday, and then the stock market shot to the moon. That's great news, and we hope that this will continue. Unfortunately, the situation remains that this is a very volatile. We cannot predict what can happen. It's impossible to predict. So, what are the scenarios moving forward? Well, there are three scenarios I'll give you in terms of chances. Scenario number one is the war would re engage, right? Now, we used to think that that chance is very low, but as time goes by, wow, the chances of a war happening again is now high. So, the possibility of no deal is high, the possibility of a ceasefire lapse is also high. Then the only way the Americans and Israeli can get the uranium at hand is to have a war. Plus, that's the only way they can push the Iranians to open up the Straits of Hormuz. In that situation, then the bad things that has happened a few weeks ago will happen again. The oil prices will go up, stock market will come down, and things like that. So hard to say what will happen. Oh, there's also a scenario, a sub-scenario within this scenario. The question is, in a re-engagement of war, who's winning? If the Americans win, then possibly, the situation might cool down. But if the American were to lose, then that's a different story. So in scenario B, scenario 2, the ceasefire get extended. This is a very high possibility, knowing that Trump and the Iranians don't really want to fight a war. So in this kind of scenario, they may extend by another 7 to 14 days to allow the hopeful peace negotiation to go on. And if this were to happen, then maybe there's some good news and the stock market will have a positive reaction. Then oil price will probably stay at where they are right now, which is at Friday's price, which is a good news. And just kicking the can down the line, down the road, hopefully there will be some breakthrough. And scenario C, which is scenario 3, is that they have a handshake, right? They have a handshake. Great. They have a handshake, they have a deal, and both sides agreed to something, middle ground, or even one side surrendering to the other. But in this situation, I would say that even if this were to happen, you'll be further down. I don't think it'll be so fast. So this thing, I put it at extremely unlikely. So of all the three scenarios, the most likely scenario would be a ceasefire extension while the military build-up continue, get ready, a lot of posturing, a lot of weapons pointing each other. And then, of course, quite high as well. I wouldn't say as high as the possibility of a ceasefire extension would be a reigniting of the war. And I think these will be the three scenarios I can think of. I'm happy to hear your view as well. Let's take a look at 1973. 1973 oil embargo would tell us some story. Now, markets are generally hopeful by nature. Everybody is very optimistic. But the oil embargo that was initially launched in 1973, the supply shock lasts for 6 months. 6 months. And it caused a massive downturn together with a lot of other things that happened, caused a massive downturn for 10 years. 10 years. That was the cost of the lost decade. Now, I won't go into detail there. The lost decade simply means that the S&P 500 hit a high and never returned until 10 years later. Now, in between them, there's a lot of complexity. Why exactly happened? There were some policy errors amidst all these things. But we also need to be cognizant that things could happen, could flip either way, and it's almost unpredictable. Well, a lot of people say, Mr. Lu, but the stock market is at all-time high right now. I like it. I like it that it's high. I also like it that it's go down. So we are investors that take advantage of all situation. And why could we do so? Let me repeat. The strategy is very clear, right? Put a strong financial safety net in your CPF and for the Malaysian in your EPF. That will compound regardless of whatever happens in any crisis. You don't even need the Straits of Hormuz to be open. And probably you don't want to chase rally at this point in time, no, and hold your dry powder, and I'll deploy when the market goes down. So what to look out for? Well, right now, to see Monday and Tuesday whether there will be a confirmed date for round 2 negotiation. If the news doesn't say anything about this, then the chances of bad things happen is higher. Well, if the ceasefire expire on Wednesday, and if Trump's extend it, then that will be quite good news. There's a good likelihood that will happen. And what will happen will also determined by the conflict between Israel and Lebanon. So all these have implications to the stock market. Now, the mindset I'm holding on is this. A lot of people like to predict the stock market. You don't need to, right? Well, the mindset that we should have in preparation for this unknown volatile outcome is this. If peace were to break out, the market rally, our existing assets will compound. That's great. We don't need to sell them. We need to hold them. In fact, we need to hold them almost for a lifetime to let it compound. So moving forward, things are uncertain, but our investment strategy remain the same. Whatever I have, I'm not going to sell it. Okay, I let it compound, especially in the scenario that if peace were to come, the stock market were to climb, this set of assets will go up phenomenally, just like what's happening right now. But if the war were to resume and the market crash, we deploy it, just like what we have done over the last few weeks when it came down. And if the extension of the ceasefire continue, the market doesn't go up, doesn't go down kind of thing, we just stay one side. The financial safety net that we have accumulated in our CPF will continue to compound as well. And especially those in the CPF, SA, and your EPF, you'll continue to go up. So in all three scenarios, we win. Okay? So I think that should be the kind of investment strategy that we deploy. So now a lot of things are evolving by the hour. I will just keep a close watch. I'll bring to you more news as they break out. I'll see you in the live stream. Bye-bye.